Hello friends, welcome to my channel learning all aspects of food safety. So today I have come up with very important topic that is HACCP. So HACCP is a very important topic when you consider food safety. So what is basically HACCP? So if you're going into the full form, it is nothing but hazard analysis of critical control points. But what is this HACCP? HACCP is food safety management system. Nowadays, we know in most of the food industries, they have this HACCP implementation in their food industry. So why we need this HACCP? What is the purpose of HACCP or what benefit this HACCP is providing to any food industry? And we will discuss about the principles of HACCP. What are the preliminary steps before HACCP implementation? What are the prerequisite programs which forms the basis of HACCP? So, in this video, we will have a detailed look into all these topics, which will help you better understand the concept of HACCP. So, let's get into the PPT. So, this is the full form Hazard Analysis of Critical Control Points. So, whatever we are discussing in this video today is very important as far as you are concerned about how a food industry is operating. What all things have to be taken care when you are operating in a food industry? What all chances of risk happens in a food industry, especially in cases of food poisoning? We know that a lot of cases of food poisoning is happening. So HACCP is basically a food safety management system which helps in reducing the risk of food poisoning or avoiding the food poisoning. So in this video, when you discuss gradually, you will understand why HACCP is so important and why we need to implement HACCP in any food industry. So HACCP, H stands for hazard, A stands for analysis, C stands for critical, C stands for control, and P stands for points. So it is hazard analysis of critical control points. So HACCP, it is a management system in which food safety is addressed through analysis of and control of biological, chemical, physical hazards from raw material production, procurement and handling to manufacturing, distribution and consumption of the finished product. So we know that we have learned about hazards in detail in previous videos. We discussed about biological hazards, microbiological hazards, physical hazards, chemical hazards. So these hazards are likely to occur at any step of the process, starting from raw material procurement till the product reaches the consumer, the finished product reaches to the consumer. At any of these stages, there is a chances for hazard to occur. So what we have to do is we have to prevent the hazard or we have to reduce the hazard to an acceptable level. So HACCP is implemented in order to achieve this. Now, it was first developed and used by Pillsbury Company in late 1950s in order to provide safe food for American space program. So that was the first use of HACCP. Then later on there was many developments and later on it became a mandatory requirement in most of the food industries. So nowadays when you can see in most of the food companies, they are telling they are HACCP certified. So that gives what we say into the customers. If you're very well aware about HACCP, you can understand that if a company is implementing HACCP, it means we are actually providing safe and secured food for the consumers. Okay, so HACCP certification has become mandatory in many of the food industries. Now, what are the advantages of HACCP? So why HACCP is important? So it will help in prioritizing and managing the food safety issues. So we know that as far as food industry is concerned, we know that it is a very important responsibility of any food industry to produce safe food for its consumers. So in the process of producing safe food, there are many barriers, right? There can be hazards that occurs like physical hazards, chemical hazards, biological hazards. Contamination chances are very high. So we have to implement a system such as HACCP in order to reduce the chances of these hazards coming into our food product. So the second point, control major food hazards such as biological hazards, chemical hazards, physical hazards, etc. It provides confidence to stakeholders that the food was produced safely. So for the owners of the food industry, or the persons who are actually governing the food business, for them also it gives a great confidence that they are producing safe food for consumption. Covers all forms of potential food safety risk, whether they occur naturally in food or caused by environment or caused by production error. So whatever coming in, whatever chances of hazards which can occur naturally in food or brought by presence of pollutants in the environment or due to a error in production, etc., can be covered in all the potential food safety risk will be covered under this. It also help you comply with legal requirements. So we know that if in case if we are producing the food and that food is not safe for consumption, or suppose the food has reached the consumer and the consumer has found out some metal particle in the food and the consumer is filing a complaint, you know that a lot of legal legal problems come behind that, and the business might have to be shut down. In some cases, the business operators, they have to shut down their business, and sometimes as compensation they have to give a huge amount. So it helps you to comply with the legal requirements. Okay. Now there are also barriers to HACCP. We cannot simply, we cannot tell that we have, if we are telling that we have implemented HACCP, we cannot tell that we are producing safe food. There are some barriers for effective implementation of HACCP. One is lack of management commitment. Okay, so it is actually a collective effort. This HACCP is actually a collective effort that you will learn in later slides. You will understand about that. It's a collective effort. There has to be a lot of dedication and huge commitment to that. So the lack of management commitment is a barrier to HACCP. General hygiene standards are not in place or poorly developed. For example, if you are in a food production company and you are a worker in the company, you know that before entering to the food premises, you have to wash your hands. If there is no proper hand washing facility over there, then you might not wash your hands before entering into the production area. So that lack of availability for hand washing becomes a problem, because the person might go inside the food premises, something from his food passes on to the food, and later by the food is contaminated and that food reaches the consumer can complain. So that is actually happens. Okay. Then lack of knowledge or training and understanding, especially science based knowledge. People are not aware about all these things. First of all, if you want something not to happen, you should understand about that thing, right? So people are lacking knowledge or the basic training about what is happening inside the production unit. So we should be aware about what is happening inside the production premises. Okay. So the lack of knowledge or training and understanding, especially science-based knowledge, is again a barrier to HACCP implementation in food industry. Lack of resources, especially the time for implementing this HACCP, monitoring it regularly, and verification. So there are a lot of steps to HACCP. It's not just simply as we tell, it's not as simple as that. There are a lot of steps. There are a lot of documentation works related to HACCP. So that lack of resources, especially time, is also a barrier to HACCP. Too complex and not understood by staff which is involved in HACCP implementation. Too much paperwork or inaccurate records. The documented things are inaccurate. It's not valid. Okay. Too many control points, which is wrongly identified as critical control points. So these terminologies we will discuss later. So there are some terminologies associated with HACCP which we should be very much aware about. Okay. It is not based on sound science and technical information. So these are all the barriers to HACCP. Then sometimes we actually give this HACCP to a third party, teaming up with a third party, and they will actually help us in implementing the HACCP to our food industry. They will actually help us creating a HACCP manual, and according to that, we have to follow the HACCP implementation. So this imposition of an external of the shelf consultancy package, there has been a little contribution from relevant staff within the organization. So whoever is working in the organization, they are only contributing very less. Actually, it should be a collective effort of all the people in the organization. In order to achieve HACCP, everyone has to work collectively and they should put their efforts. Okay. HACCP manual is left in the manager's office. HACCP should be brought into food rooms and CCP is clearly identified. So when you are making this HACCP manual, it's not just simply to keep in manager's room. The HACCP manual should be brought into the food rooms, the place where we are preparing the food, and we should identify clearly the critical control points. Okay, simply we are writing the manual. Okay, this is happening like this, but we doesn't know what is happening inside. Then it's of no use. We cannot understand. We should understand what is clearly happening in the food production area. Then only we can create a HACCP manual according to the processes what are happening there. Okay, so that are the barriers to HACCP. Now, as I told you, some terminologies you should be well aware. The critical control point, as we mentioned earlier, it is actually a procedure or practice in food handling preparation that will reduce, eliminate, or prevent hazards. And it is a kill step that kills the microorganism, or a control step that prevents or slows their growth. Hazard, as we know, it's unacceptable contamination, microbial growth, persistence of toxins, or survival of microorganisms that are concerned to food safety. And hazards we have already discussed. You can check out our previous videos where we have discussed in detail about biological hazards, microbiological hazards, physical hazards, chemical hazards, etc. Monitoring, as the name indicates, we are checking continuously to determine if the criteria established by the critical control points have been achieved. Then risk, probability that a condition will lead to a hazard. Okay, then severity, seriousness of consequence of results of hazard. So these are the principles of HACCP. We have 7 principles. This all of you should actually keep in your mind. We have 7 principles. So first principle is we have to conduct an hazard analysis. Means we know that there is physical hazards, chemical hazards, biological hazards, microbiological hazards. So if you are producing a particular product, you have list out what all are the processes happening in that. Okay, now you have actually a process flow diagram with you. Okay, so at each of the steps you have to identify what are the possible hazards that can occur. So if we know that hazards, we can clearly prevent that hazards. Okay, so at each step, so first for example, if you are producing a particular material, okay, for example fruit juice, you are preparing fruit juice. So for that, first you have to procure the raw material. So what all are the possible hazards when you procure the raw material? So sometimes some physical hazards may be there. If you're taking the fruits, sometimes there will be physical hazards. Sometimes there will be microbial growth, biological hazards, okay, on the fruits. So what all are the possible hazards you have to understand, and what all things can be done to prevent the hazards. Then critical control point. So critical control point, suppose if the process is like, what we say, boiling. Okay. So what is the temperature for boiling? 100 degrees Celsius. So critical control point is actually that one. That boiling is the critical control point because that is the first step where the microorganisms are killed. Okay, so after that we don't have any boiling. Suppose if we don't have any cooking step after boiling, the food is actually, for example, if it is noodles. Okay, if it is noodles, we are boiling the noodles, then we are stopping, then that after that we are taking the noodles for consumption. So that boiling is a step where the microorganisms should be killed. So that will be our critical control point. Okay, then establishment of critical limits. So as I told you, boiling the temperature is 100 degree. So that 100 degrees Celsius is our critical limit. So that critical limit has to be achieved. If the temperature is not achieved, that is it is actually below 100 degrees Celsius, then the temperature has not been achieved. Okay, so what happens? There is a breach of critical limit. So we have to monitor whether the critical limit is breached or not. That is the fourth step, development of monitoring procedures. Suppose if the critical limit is breached, what we can do? That is the corrective action. We have to take the corrective action. What we have to do? We have to cook it more. We have to raise the temperature. We have to raise the temperature to 100 degrees Celsius. Then verification. We have to validate if the temperature has been achieved or not. Okay. Then 7th point, documentation. Whatever things now we have done, that we have to document. That is documentation. So I hope you understood the principles of HACCP. So first one is conducting hazard analysis. Second one is identification of critical control points. Third one is establishment of critical limits. Fourth one is monitoring. Fifth one is corrective action. Sixth one is verification. Seventh one is documentation. So that is what we have discussed here. 7 steps of HACCP. Okay. But before the 7 steps, we have some preliminary tasks. What is this preliminary task? So we have 5 preliminary tasks before HACCP principles are to be done. That is, first one is assembling the HACCP team. So in your food industry, we have to make a team of 5 or 7 members. So usually the size of HACCP team will be proportionate to the size of the industry. If our industry is very big, then the HACCP team members will be more. Okay. So accordingly, so usually there will be 5 or 7 members, and these members will be from different disciplines. So it is multidisciplinary. Like, for example, there will be a person from microbiology section. There will be a person from quality assurance. There will be an engineer who will be knowing much more about the equipments. Okay, design of the equipments, like that. Okay, so there will be a HACCP team leader also. Okay, then second point, that is describe the food and its distribution. So what is our food product? Okay, the food industry, what product we are making? Okay, so describe that food and its distribution. So in that, we have to discuss about what are the raw materials which is used for preparing the food, what are the ingredients which we are using in preparing the food, the recipe or the process of food preparation, what all steps are there, and how the food is actually, what we say, stored, whether we have to store it in freezer, whether we have to store it in refrigerator, what is the temperature of storage, etc. Okay. Then the third one, what is the intended use and the consumers of the food? So this food is intended for what? Which category of people? That is, there are vulnerable groups. Who are the vulnerable groups? That also you should be very aware of. The pregnant women, elderly people, people whose immunity is compromised, like, acute immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, people with AIDS, or people with, what we say, allergic reactions, etc. So those peoples are the vulnerable risk. Okay. So we have to tell this product is intended for which purpose, or it is for which people. Okay. So in some foods we can see it's written it's not suitable for pregnant women. It's not suitable for infants. Okay. So the intended use should be described. Okay. Then we have to develop a process flow diagram which describes the process. Okay. Process flow diagram, as we know, it's a systematic representation of the steps which is happening in a production of a particular food. Then we have to verify the flow diagram, that is on-site verification. On-site verification means after creating a rough flow diagram, we have to go inside the production unit and we have to check whether our flow diagram is correct with the sequence of operations which is happening in the food industry. That is the on-site verification of flow diagram. So I hope you understood these are the preliminary steps in development of HACCP plan. So the first step is assembling a team of individuals, multidisciplinary team, and it should have individuals from departments such as engineering, production, sanitation, quality assurance, food microbiology. Then we have to describe the product. The product description, it will be, whether the product is distributed frozen, whether it is refrigerator or at ambient temperature, along with the ingredients used, recipe, etc. Identify the intended use and consumers. So intended consumers may be a general public or a particular segment of population. Then flow diagram, as I told you, systematic representation of sequence of all steps involved in an operation. On-site confirmation of flow diagram, they should perform an on-site review of the operation to verify the accuracy and completeness of flow diagram. So I hope you got a clear idea about the preliminary steps which is involved in HACCP implementation. So that's all for today's class. Actually, HACCP is a very vast topic. We cannot cover it in 1 or 2, 3 sessions. We have more sessions coming up with much more knowledge on prerequisite programs, which is the foundation of HACCP. That all we'll be discussing in detail, and also we will be discussing about HACCP with an example. Okay, so that all will be coming in upcoming videos. So anyway, if you have liked this video, please share it to your friends and relatives who are in the field of food technology, biotechnology, etc. And please subscribe to our channel, Learning All Aspects of Food Safety, and also drop down your valuable suggestions in the comment box. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.